Welcome back to the Red Wings Report with Strings and Pucks. This is Jeremy Laura, the stuttering guitarist. Just want to do a review of Steve Yzerman'S press conference. I've put the link in the description. I took notes during so that I could kind of go over everything with you. First, there's just some big questions everybody's been answering. I think I'll just get those out of the way. PTOs. A lot of you are curious on who Yzerman's going to have at camp. At this point, he said they have no PTOs committed. They'd made some offers. Some players took offers from other teams. I'm wondering if Chicago's situation, where Grizzlick went there, if Detroit may have offered him a chance. But there are players who they've made PTO offers to. He didn't say who, but haven't accepted anything yet. Those players are probably holding out for a guarantee of some kind, but at this point, no PTOs scheduled to be at Red Wings camp. Second, and this is kind of big news, Simon Edvinsson is not available for camp. He's been rehabbing an injury, and Yzerman said he believes he'll be ready for the regular season. This is very disappointing. I wanted to see him paired with Seider in preseason and in camp. Those camp reps are actually fairly important. It's really getting back into the swing of things. You see what chemistry's on the ice. Doesn't mean Edvinsson won't be a massive contributor to the season. You need him healthy. It's a long, difficult season. You got the Olympic break, so no Edvinsson for camp. Estimated at this point that he'll be ready to start the season. Carter Bear is ready for camp. He's been cleared. The training staff decided, since he hadn't really played in competition since March, that the prospects tournament might have been a really bad idea. They were probably right. It got very physical. Inserting Lombardi in his place turned out to be very fortuitous. I think Lombardi is trying to show everybody where his game is at and how close he is to being the next NHL call-up. So Carter Bear, ready for camp, ready to roll. They just didn't want him in that game as his first competition since March, where he could potentially get hurt, re-aggravate the injury. Going beyond that, there were good questions about pressure regarding the playoffs. Helene St. James opened up the questioning, talking about that. I think there is a perception, and I believe there is pressure for the playoffs, but the perception of fans and the media is not reality. We don't know the conversations that Yzerman and Chris Ilitch have had. Yzerman said he and Chris talk about it all the time. If you remember, Steve Yzerman's first warning when he came to Detroit was, this is going to be a long process, temper your expectations. So Detroit has greatly improved their first round drafting. We can all step back and say this. The free agent signings have not been good, not been what they needed to be. Patrick Kane, been a huge boon for the team. That's been a fantastic signing. Kopp, Comfer, Tarasenko last year, Sherratt, Hall, Gustafsson, he added to the power play, but for the most part, especially on the blue line, free agent signings have not panned out enough to fill the gaps for this team to be competitive while the core continues to develop. And the core of the drafting is still the core of the rebuild. That's going to bring me to my biggest issue with the press conference. Toward the end, one of the final questioners picked back up on that theme of what was happening to Yzerman last year, if you remember this, literally asking, essentially, do you deserve to keep your job? That's to me a ridiculous question. And the questioner followed up with, should you give up future assets and squeeze in a deal just to make the playoffs so that you can buy yourself more time? As Yzerman doesn't need to buy himself time. This is still between him and the Ilitch family of what he's building. The Atlantic Division I don't think is arguably, I think is absolutely the worst division to try to build a contender in right now. You've got 4 of the last six Stanley Cups in Florida, 6 of the last 6 playoff games in Florida. You've got Toronto. You've got Montreal is now coming on. Buffalo, we forget about Buffalo. That drought of 15 years, they're going to do everything they can, and they have massive talent in there. Ottawa, they've done incredibly well. So the timeline of when does this team get back to the playoffs, it's frustrating, but the reality is you've got to build your way back there, and you're going against teams with recent Stanley Cups who've been able to reload. The cap rise enabled Florida to keep pretty much the entire team together. So this question of just trying to squeeze into the playoffs and giving up an asset, which all teams were asking for last year, were Marco Kasper, and then Sandin-Pellikka is rumored to have been asked for. I haven't heard that from too many people. But if Yzerman had given up Marco Kasper to get a defenseman in, you would look so bad right now. He's now your second center. Yzerman confirmed that. He sees him as the number 2 center. That's up to McClellan. If they had given up Kasper to get the defenseman they were looking at, you might have a good defenseman for 3 years if you got someone around 30, 3 to 5 years. But you're going to have to watch for a decade as Kasper is a top 6 center on any other team in the league. Horrible, horrible. So this framing, this questioning, it felt disrespectful, and it felt like a fan had gotten in on the phone line and just said such short-sighted things that a GM would get fired if you gave up someone who could be a potential cornerstone just to squeeze into the playoffs and buy yourself more time as a GM. I'm all for holding Yzerman again accountable, but last year's exit interview, I've been borderline disgusted with the attitude of people in the room who are frustrated because press corps can be fans too, but to ask a GM if they deserve to keep their job, this is so, it's so unnecessary. Right? It's sports. It's going to play out how it's going to play out. I encourage you, just watch it. Let me know if you agree with me or if I'm completely in the wrong. But framing it that way just felt completely unprofessional, and I'm fairly certain it's the same organization that did it during Yzerman's end of the year presser, saying, "Do you deserve to keep your job?" I guarantee this: if that individual goes back to their office and their press pass was revoked, they'd think that was incredibly unfair, that they do deserve to keep their job. So there's kind of a double standard there too, because the Red Wings, you get invited to those things. I haven't been on them. I've been writing for mostly blogs for the last 6 years. To get invited to one of those scrums, it's a very big deal. They demand a lot of professionalism. So if they revoked someone's press pass because of stuff like that, I might not blame them at this point. So the other questions were just talking about the way to build a team. And again, so short-sighted. Everyone's focused on just get into the playoffs and get out. I want them in the playoffs, and I think the team needs to have added 2 pieces over the summer they weren't able to add. That was a top 4 defenseman, a top 6 winger. But you can't give up pieces, which means they swung out in free agency because really Nikolai Ehlers was the most prominent player available at wing, and he chose to go to Carolina, right? People aren't choosing to come here. But this thought that you can just buy and build a team when first players get to decide where they go, right? There's talk about taxes and things, but I think some of that is taken out of proportion because of, it was just 7 years ago where Florida was covering the balcony seats with a tarp because people weren't coming to the games. Now you can't get a ticket, right? And of course, people love it in Florida. You have a chance to win a cup. You've got the low taxes, incredible weather. But if that team falls off again, they're going to have the same problems that they'd had before of attracting talent. So it's not all about the taxes and things. It's about going to a market where you can win. Like the Erik Karlsson trade. A lot of chatter about that, but in the end, he's going to decide. He's at the end of his career. I wouldn't blame him for not going to Detroit because he wants to win a cup. You want that in your life, on your resume, however you put it. So again, I thought the questioning at the end was really disrespectful. I want you to look it up. I'm not going to mention who did it. You'll know it as soon as you hear it. Links in the description. Final questioning by Bob Duff, which I thought Bob did a really good job on this. Asked about Hamonic. I asked about this as well. My issue with Hamonic was never the player in just, I've got anything against Travis Hamonic. It was about the glut of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 defensemen that we have. Defensemen who on any team would typically be third pairing, maybe even healthy scratch. We just have a ton of them. You're giving another contract spot up to that. But Yzerman'S answer was, I thought, really, really good on this. Hamonic played in the top 4 for Ottawa. Ottawa had some success last year that Detroit didn't have. Hamonic has some physicality. He's also going to teach younger players how to play the game. And that's my argument too. If they could get Karlsson, I'm all for it. Because he's going to teach guys things they can't learn from a player who hasn't been there. So Hamonic was brought in. They thought his physicality and his game in Ottawa would help him in Detroit. It sounds like the plan was for him and Edvinsson, and that may still be the plan going forward, but again, Edvinsson not available. So that was it. I just encourage everyone to look back when the streak stopped. Look back around what fans in the media were saying in 2014, 2015, 2016. You'll find comments like this. It's not good enough to get to the playoffs or to the postseason if you just get knocked out in the first round. Fans, media were saying, wouldn't it be better just to tear this team all the way down and start over? Yzerman was the first guy to do that. In 2019, opening night, look at that roster. Only one player from that roster is left on the ice. You get rid of 20 players. You are starting from scratch. Drafting, I think they hit very well with Seider, with Raymond, with Kasper. It looks like we're going to see Danielson coming up, Sandin-Pellikka. Now you're starting to see guys like Boyum, Major, Finney. Looks like he could be a future bottom 6 guy really, really well. The drafting, I don't have a problem with. Free agent signings have been pretty bad. Outside of Patrick Kane, with Kopp, Comfer, Tarasenko, some of those deals that were supposed to improve the forward core greatly, they didn't do it. On defense, Sherratt, Hall, Gustafsson, they have not given the boost needed for the team to overcome developing young players. So the deal for John Gibson is going to be the hallmark deal of the summer. And then Yzerman also said internal improvements, what we've said all along. He honestly made it clear, if a player makes this team better, they get the job. They'll figure out what they have to do with the person whose spot they took. I thought that was very well said. So the guys we've talked about, Danielson, Lombardi, Boyum, Nygard, to a lesser degree, I think he really does need reps in the AHL. Sandin-Pellikka, Tuomisto, Wallinder, they have a real chance to take someone's job, and I hope they cash in on it, because at the very least, whether or not this team makes the postseason, if you have players getting ice time, contributing, that are the young drafted players at the end of this season, it makes what you have to do over the summer that much easier. You can focus your efforts on the departing UFAs on the defense, and hopefully at least a Boyum or ASP or Tuamisa or Wallander took one of those spots definitively so you can continue to build. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. I thought it was a good press conference, but I am taken aback by the complete disrespect of people asking Steve Yzerman, do you deserve to keep your job? I just think that's beyond the pale. That has no place in that press conference. And then asking if you should sacrifice the team just to squeeze into the playoffs and buy yourself more time as GM. That is such a horrible look and a really bad question. Let me know your thoughts. Training camp is starting tomorrow, I believe, so we'll be updating you, and anything that happens, I'll do an update. Thanks again.